Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are getting into something really fundamental, neuroscience-wise. Neuroplasticity. It's this incredible idea that your brain isn't, fixed. It's dynamic. It can actually change its own wiring, its function, your whole life long.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going through the research you pulled together, mapping out how this adaptability works. We'll look at how an infant's brain gets wired up, then how people can recover from, well, serious brain injuries. And finally, the really exciting part, how you, yourself, can sort of intentionally rewire your brain for better focus, better habits.
Okay, let's ground this first. The basics. Neuroscientists usually talk about two main types of plasticity, right?
That's right. The first one is structural plasticity. You can think of this like building new roads. The brain is literally creating new physical connections, new pathways, new synapses. It's like carving out a whole new highway system where maybe there was just, I don't know, open land before.
Oh, building new infrastructure. Got it. And the second type, synaptic plasticity.
Yeah, so if structural is building the road, synaptic plasticity is about, let's say, upgrading the road surface, making it faster, more efficient.
Ah, okay. So strengthening the connections you already have.
Precisely. It's about changing how effectively signals travel across existing synapses. This is huge for memory. You don't grow a whole new brain cell every time you learn a name. Instead, you strengthen that specific connection. You pave that dirt road, turn it into a superhighway. Makes the signal almost instantaneous. That's how things stick.
Okay, let's trace this from the beginning then. Early life. You're born with something like 100 billion neurons, which is just mind-boggling. But the real explosion early on isn't making more neurons, it's about the connections, right?
Absolutely. The sheer speed of this initial wiring phase, which we call synaptogenesis, is, well, it's hard to grasp. In the first year, an infant's brain forms over 1 million new connections every single second.
1 million a second.
Yeah. It's the brain frantically trying to adapt to whatever specific environment it finds itself in. Learning the sound of a parent's voice, recognizing faces. It's tuning itself to its world immediately.
But you can't just keep adding connections like that forever. Doesn't it get messy? Too dense?
It does. By around age 6, the brain is actually overly connected, so then comes the next critical phase. Synaptic pruning. This is basically the brain's big cleanup operation.
Getting rid of the clutter.
Exactly. It starts eliminating the connections that aren't used much, the weaker ones, the redundant ones. And it strengthens the ones that are used frequently, the important pathways. It really is use it or lose it on a massive scale.
So the pathways you use regularly become the main highways, and the unused ones just sort of fade away.
That's a great way to put it. And this pruning isn't a quick snip. It goes on for years, well into adolescence, maybe even up to around 16. And the timing varies, like the visual parts of the brain peak early, maybe 8 months for synapse formation. But the prefrontal cortex, that's your decision-making planning hub, that peaks later, around 15 months. And the pruning there takes much longer. Survival first, planning later, makes sense.
Okay, but the big point here is that this ability to change, this plasticity, it doesn't just switch off when you become an adult. It changes, but it continues.
It absolutely continues, and that's crucial. It's the very basis for recovery after things like stroke or traumatic brain injury or even tumor removal. The brain, especially with intensive rehab, tries to find ways around the damage. It attempts to reroute functions.
And sometimes the results are just incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned Representative Gabrielle Giffords using music therapy, singing, to basically force her brain to find new pathways for speech after her injury. That's plasticity in action.
A really powerful example of functional reorganization, yes. But the research also points out plasticity isn't always beneficial. It can be maladaptive. Think about phantom limb sensation.
Ah, right, where someone feels the limb that isn't there anymore.
Exactly. Up to 80% of amputees experience this, sometimes with intense pain. Those neurons that used to get signals from the limb, they're still there, still firing, but the brain's map gets confused after the loss. That remapping can cause problems.
So the brain adapted, but maybe not in the best way. But then there's the flip side, where one sense helps out another.
Yes, cross-modal plasticity. And this stuff is fascinating. If someone is deaf, their auditory cortex doesn't just go silent. It can actually be recruited to help with vision or touch. Studies show deaf individuals often have better peripheral vision or heightened tactile sensitivity. The brain reallocates those resources.
And the echolocation studies with blind individuals, that's amazing. They use clicks and listen to the echoes to see their surroundings.
Right. And when you look at their brain activity, those echoes are being processed in the visual cortex, the part of the brain normally used for sight, not in the auditory parts. The brain has completely repurposed that area based on need.
So understanding this allows for better therapies.
Definitely. Things like constraint-induced movement therapy, CIMT, where you restrain the good limb to force the brain to rewire the injured one, or using virtual reality for immersive rehab. And increasingly, brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, are being developed to directly leverage plasticity for healing.
Okay, these technologies like BCIs and VR sound incredibly promising, but also potentially complex ethically. What's the main flag the research raises there?
Well, the big one is patient vulnerability and data privacy.
Mm-hmm.
BCIs especially are reading detailed brain activity. So the sources really stress the need for crystal clear informed consent, not just agreeing to the therapy, but understanding exactly how that very personal brain data is stored, who accesses it, how it's secured. As we link minds and machines more directly, protecting cognitive privacy is becoming a major issue.
That makes sense. Okay, let's pivot from clinical recovery to what we can all do day to day. Self-directed plasticity, changing our own habits, building resilience. How does that work at the brain level?
Well, habits are essentially automated loops in the brain. There's a cue, which triggers a craving, leading to a response, which delivers a reward. This whole cycle runs mostly on autopilot, deep in the basal ganglia. The brain's reward and habit center, largely fueled by the neurotransmitter dopamine.
So self-directed neuroplasticity is about consciously stepping into that loop, making it less automatic.
Precisely. It's about bringing conscious awareness to it. The key practice the research highlights is actively noticing and reinforcing the positive feelings from a healthy action. So, say you go for a walk at lunch instead of scrolling your phone. Afterwards, you need to consciously think, okay, I feel more alert now, less stressed. You have to actively link that good feeling to the walk. That tells your brain, hey, this is rewarding.
This makes me think of the whole 21 days to form a habit idea. That's pretty much debunked now, isn't it? What's the real story?
Yeah, the 21-day thing is largely a myth, or at least an oversimplification. Actual studies found that for simple habits, it takes an average of 66 days for the behavior to become automatic.
66. Okay, that's quite a bit longer.
It is. And for more complex changes, like fundamentally shifting your thinking patterns, that can take much, much longer, maybe closer to 250 days for some things. The crucial point isn't the exact number, it's understanding that it takes consistent effort over time. Perfection isn't the goal. Persistence is. Just keep showing up.
Okay, so consistency is key. Any tricks or techniques the research suggests to help us stick with it for those 66 plus days?
Yeah, a couple of good ones. One is focusing on habit swapping. Keep the cue, but change the routine that follows. So if your cue is, say, pouring a drink at 6 p.m., keep the 6 p.m. ritual, keep the nice glass, but swap the alcohol for sparkling water or something else. Another tip is to aim small initially. 15 minutes of a new activity like learning an instrument or meditating that's only 1% of your day makes it feel less daunting.
And what about just thinking about it? Visualization, does that actually do anything?
It does, surprisingly. Mental rehearsal, vividly imagining yourself successfully doing the new behavior, actually activates many of the same neural pathways, up to 80%, some studies suggest, as physically doing it. For the best effect, try visualizing for maybe 15-20 minutes, perhaps when you're relaxed, like before you sleep. Really picture the details.
Let's talk resilience. Can simply thinking more positively genuinely rewire the brain?
Yes, the changes are physical and measurable. Usually you see effects after about 8 to 12 weeks of consistent practice, like mindfulness or gratitude exercises. What happens is you get increased activity and even gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex, your executive control center. That helps with emotional regulation. And, importantly, you often see reduced reactivity and even volume in the amygdala, the brain's fear hub. This helps counteract our built-in negativity bias, our tendency to focus on threats.
You mentioned chronic stress can actually cause the PFC to shrink, atrophy. Is that reversible? Can things like, I don't know, deep breathing actually counteract that physical damage?
It seems so. The stress system, the HPA axis, it's like your body's alarm. When it's constantly on due to chronic stress, that flood of cortisol isn't good for the PFC. Dendrites, the connections shrink. But yes, interventions can help. We can influence the neurochemicals involved.
They like dopamine, serotonin.
Exactly. Dopamine for reward, serotonin for mood, and GABA is a big one. It's the brain's main calming neurotransmitter, reducing anxiety. Practices that stimulate the vagus nerve, think deep, slow breathing like the 4-7-8 method, humming. Even cold showers for some seem to boost GABA's effectiveness and help regulate that HPA axis. It helps dampen the stress response and promote flexibility.
It's amazing that these simple practices have measurable effects, and this potential for change, it carries on throughout life, right? Even into older age.
Absolutely. Aging isn't the end of plasticity, not by a long shot. The brain still responds significantly to lifestyle. Two big factors jump out from the research: novelty and challenge. People who stay in mentally demanding jobs or jobs that require them to constantly learn new things tend to have better cognitive function later in life. It acts as a buffer against decline.
So it's not just about comfort. It's about pushing yourself, learning new skills, even minor ones.
Precisely. And don't forget physical exercise. Aerobic exercise is like, well, fertilizer for the brain. It boosts growth factors, especially BDNF's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is crucial for neuron health and growth. Regular exercise is linked to larger gray matter volume in several key brain areas. It physically supports the structure.
What about purely mental challenges, like learning a language later in life?
That's another powerful tool. Multilingualism seems to be great for the brain. People who speak multiple languages regularly tend to show greater gray matter density in certain areas, like the parietal cortex, and also denser white matter. Constantly switching between languages forces the brain to be more efficient and flexible in its communication pathways. It's a fantastic cognitive workout.
Okay, so we've covered a lot from the initial wiring through recovery to actively shaping our habits and minds throughout life. If you had to boil it down, what's the single most important message here?
I think it's this: your brain's future, your cognitive path is not set in stone by your genes. How you develop, how you age, how you recover. It's this constant dance between your biology, your environment, and crucially, your own actions and choices. The brain is always trying to optimize itself based on the demands you place on it. You're not just along for the ride, you're actively involved in shaping it.
That's a really empowering thought. You're the architect. Okay, so final thought for everyone listening, building on that idea. Given that we know even late in life, pushing yourself with novelty helps maintain cognitive function, what's one new, genuinely challenging thing? Could be tiny, learning a new knot, trying a complex recipe, starting a language app that you'll try this week, just to nudge your brain towards staying flexible, something to think about.